Coming up here in a couple weeks, we will remember that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, July 13th, 2024. I was on the stage there at the farm area there, the fairgrounds, if you will, there in Butler, Pennsylvania, on that warm, hot afternoon, when Thomas Crooks took a shot at President Trump on stage shortly after he walked out and was into his speech. Well, the mystery swirls around what happened on that day. Who knew what? And what did they know? And who else could potentially be involved? I know that from the very beginning there's been speculation. Indeed, it was maybe more than one shooter. I think that quickly got denounced. But then there's still a lot of unanswered questions. Well, there is a new film coming out on July 13th. Let's take a look at the trailer and we'll talk to the director on the other side.
On July 13th, 2024, a lone gunman named Thomas Crooks tried to kill former President Donald J. Trump. It's a good story, but is it true? Or is something much more sinister in play? What is the government hiding? Will we ever know the truth? The FBI won't admit it, but the evidence is clear. The president is still in danger. You think you know who shot Trump, but you're dead wrong. See the shocking new documentary, Who Shot Trump? One day only, Sunday, July 13th at the Texas Theater. Tickets available now.
So who shot President Trump? Maybe Thomas Crooks or maybe someone else as well. Join me now to talk about that and a whole lot more is J.D. Wilcox, filmmaker, producer of the new documentary coming out on July 13th, Who Shot Trump? J.D., thanks for joining us today. This has been something that I know many Americans watched play in front of them live on television. I was there about 50 yards away from him. Let's talk about first, what led you to come out with this documentary about this shooting? Like what piqued your curiosity to make you want to shoot this documentary?
Well, great to meet you, Brian. Thank you. First, before we get started, is my suit okay? Because I know the suit is important. I never wear a suit. Is this okay?
Your suit looks great, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So why I did this, years ago, back in 2014, I was sitting in LAX airport in Terminal 3 when a crazy man walked in with a machine gun and started shooting up the TSA checkpoint. And then he walked through the terminal shooting people as he went. And I was in that terminal. The police eventually caught him and shot him. And I have a picture of him lying in a pool of blood about 5 feet away from where I was sitting. And I lived through that experience the same way that you lived through the Butler shooting. And a couple weeks after that, it was really big news at the time, but then the story just sort of died out. And it turns out that the TSA messed up that day and the LAPD messed up that day. And when those things happen, the government just kind of wants these stories to go away. And I think that's what's happened here with Butler, Pennsylvania. Secret Service doesn't look good. The government doesn't look good. And I just sort of noticed that that story was going away, just like the story at LAX went away. And I didn't want to let this one get away and just be swept under the rug. It's too important. In my opinion, the Butler assassination attempt is one of the most important events of my lifetime. And I didn't want this story of a lone gunman, 20-year-old college student who lives at home with his parents, who is a registered Republican and has no military training, somehow outsmarted the entire Secret Service, state and local law enforcement, and got 8 shots at Trump before anybody could stop him. It's an unbelievable story at its face, and I never believed it from the beginning. And when the media and the government didn't really investigate, I decided that I had to go and investigate and find out what really happened. And I did. And we found an overwhelming amount of evidence that indicates that Not only were there additional people involved that day, but there is a massive cover-up to prevent the American people from knowing what I know.
Okay, so the cover-up, that would go on Joe Biden's watch, because obviously this happened under his administration, under his leadership with the FBI and all the other agencies. So what was the, and you don't have to give it away right now because we want people to have a chance to go and watch the movie. But what was the first piece of evidence that you came across that suggests that Thomas Crooks was not alone in this?
Yeah, well, there are several bombshells in this movie. There's actually so much evidence that indicates that there's a conspiracy and a cover-up that the first draft of this movie was almost 3 hours long. And the people that watched it in my test audience, they were like, there's too much. We can't absorb all of the evidence that you're throwing at us. So we had to trim it down to just get it to 90 minutes. But one of the first things that really made me think that we weren't getting the whole story is on page 6 of the Congressional Task Force report, they just state matter-of-factly that Thomas Crooks is the gunman. But they never ever show any evidence that he is the gunman. In fact, the FBI and the government and the Congressional Task Force never even present any evidence that the body on the roof of the AGR building is Thomas Matthew Crooks. And that's the first question as an investigator I ask. Who did it? Oh, Thomas Matthew Crooks. Well, how do we know? Is that body his? We don't know. The government has presented zero evidence that the body on the roof of AGR is Thomas Matthew Crooks, but everybody believes that it is. Shouldn't it be easy for them to provide some evidence, DNA, fingerprints, something, but they haven't. And worse than that, right after the body was removed from the roof the day after the assassination, it stayed on the roof for 15 hours. But then they removed the body and the FBI washed the blood off the roof of AGR, destroying any DNA evidence that was left. And now the body has been cremated. So at this point, there is no possible way to identify, to verify the identity of that body on the roof of AGR. Yet everybody thinks it's Thomas Matthew Crooks. The government's never proven it. They've never even offered any evidence.
Okay, so I get the cremation part is a little suspicious, how quickly they did that. That is, and I think from day one, a lot of people who've been following this story had the same questions you did. So you're right on. Now let's go to some of the ballistics, some of the testing that these specialists have broken down that suggests there could have been different shots fired from other angles that Thomas Crooks, rather than Thomas Crooks, was on that building. So what did you find that suggests that theory?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not used to getting really good questions, so thank you. That's a great question. And that's really the crux of this case. If we can prove that one or more shots that day came from somewhere other than where that body was located on the roof of AGR, that's solid proof of a conspiracy. And we have that evidence. In addition, so a lot of people have looked at this, a lot of people have investigated from different angles, but as far as I can tell, I'm the only one that actually went to Butler and did what we call photogrammetry. It's a new science that they use to investigate crimes where they scan the entire area with lasers and with cameras, and they create a hyper-accurate 3D model of the entire area. And we did that. We photogrammetried the entire AGR and Butler complex. And so we have a super accurate 3D model. It's kind of like Google Earth, but much more accurate. And now we can look at that model from different directions and see exactly where a sniper could and could not have shot at President Trump. And we have found through that process very convincing evidence that there is at least one bullet that came from a direction that could not come from where the body was located on the roof of AGR. And it's overwhelming evidence. And it's not just opinion, it's forensic. It's photographs, it's results. We know where that bullet went, and that bullet could not have come from the roof of AGR.
Okay, so when this documentary is released and the public's able to watch that, which, by the way, we'll talk about where you're actually debuting this film. It has a lot of historical significance as well. What are you hoping happens after this? Do enough people at the FBI, at the whatever agency needs to get involved. What is your expectations after this movie debuts?
So my sources have told me that the FBI did the same photogrammetry 3D reconstruction of the crime scene that I did. And that means that the FBI knows what I know. Probably much more, but they at least know what I know. And if that's the case, then the FBI and the state and federal governments have been covering up that evidence for almost a year. What I want them to do is release their data. After I show my movie on July 13th, we're going to release all of the data that we've accumulated in this case. The photos, the video, the 3D model. I'm releasing everything because I want everyone out there who has questions like I do to be able to look at my data and verify that what I'm saying is true. I don't want you to believe me. I want you to look at the data for yourself and draw your own conclusions. And I want the FBI to do the same thing. They've been holding this data for a year. They're sitting on it. They've never released it. Kash Patel just a couple weeks ago said that the case is closed. Great. There's no reason not to release that data. Let's release it to the world and let the world crowdsource this investigation. Because I firmly believe if we do that, we can find the people who did this. It's not 1963 anymore. We had over 20,000 people at that rally. Every single one of them had a camera with them. That means there are 20,000 potential Zapruder films out there just waiting to solve this case. I believe if we all come together, we can solve this case. It hasn't been solved yet, even though the FBI says the case is closed.
Yeah, I know that day shortly after that, so many people had questions, and it was kind of, I remember it like it was yesterday, JD, and I think I always will remember that that day in Butler, Pennsylvania. Okay, so let's talk about real quickly. This film is debuting at a very historical spot there in Dallas. Talk about that.
So every time I make a documentary, I premiere it at the Texas Theater in Dallas. It's the theater where they caught Lee Harvey Oswald after he supposedly shot JFK. They still have his chair sort of memorialized there, the chair that he was sitting in when the police arrested him. So on July 13th at 12:30, matinee, we're going to show the movie, and then after we premiere it there, the movie and all the data will be released worldwide so that everybody else can do what we do, what I've done. And I just want to stress that I think it's real important that we solve this case because in addition to President Trump, there are 3 other people who were injured or killed that day, and they have not had justice. The family of Corey Comparator deserves justice. Dave Dutch and James Copenhaver, the other 2 men who were injured, they deserve justice, and they haven't had it because there are still people out there that were involved in this, and they've never been brought to justice.
JD, do you think President Trump's life is still in jeopardy?
Yes, I do, actually. Just a day ago, ICE arrested 11 Iranian illegal aliens in the United States who had ties to terrorist organizations. One of those 11 people that was arrested was a trained Iranian army sniper. I'm not saying that he was involved in this, but if he was out there, then who knows how many other people are out there who have the necessary set of skills to pull this off, which, by the way, Thomas Crooks did not have. Unless Thomas Crooks was a super agent, it's impossible for an untrained college student who lives at home with his parents to outsmart the entire Secret Service, all the state and federal law enforcement that were there, and get off 8 shots without being seen. Which is more likely? He's a super spy or he had a lot of help.
Yeah, it's obviously been a big mystery since then. Okay, so let's recap. July 13th, Dallas, Texas Theater. Go check it out, and hopefully not only after this film, we can maybe get a new investigation or further information will come out to make sure that we can prevent, better off, that we can prevent this ever happening again. JD, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.